Welcome back to Pokemon episode summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 413, The Symbol Life. The episode begins with Ash and Pikachu deciding to ride Charizard through the morning sky as the sun was just rising up, wanting to test Charizard's strength to make sure it was good to go for the upcoming battle against Articuno and Nolan today. Wanting to ensure that Charizard was strong enough to help him get his first Battle Frontier win at the Battle Factory. First, Ash asks Charizard to practice its dives, and Ash grips Charizard fiercely as Charizard really fast goes down toward the forest. Although it pulls up just before it lands in a river, causing a little disturbance in the water's surface from the sheer speed of Charizard flying above it. Flying above the water, Charizard pulls back up towards the sky as Ash compliments its awesome diving skills. Next, Ash asks Charizard to show how strong its flamethrower had gotten, so Charizard uses flamethrower in a very huge streak, while Max, Brock, and May watched from a balcony of the Battle Factory, where they had slept the previous night. Max remarked that Charizard has really improved since he saw it battle in the Johto League, and Brock explained that he trained hard in the Charizard Valley, which is how it got so strong in the first place. May didn't know what the fuck the Charizard Valley was, so she questioned what it was, leading Brock to explain that Ash allowed Charizard to stay at a place where a woman named Liza trains a whole bunch of Charizard to their full power, and Charizard would come to Ash whenever Ash needed its help. So basically, it was Ash's Pokemon, but it was also mostly released at this point. May questioned how Ash could leave his Charizard to train with someone else if he cared about it, leading Brock to state that Ash left it at the Charizard Valley so that Charizard could build up its strength, because he saw from the bond that he and Charizard shared that Charizard really desired to get stronger, so he put aside his own wants to keep Charizard on his team to allow Charizard to get stronger somewhere else, leaving May and Max impressed, realizing that Ash and Charizard really did have a bond after all. Back up in the sky, Ash admitted that he was very happy with Charizard's flamethrower, but he wanted to see it again. Charizard had a different idea, however, deciding to show Ash a new move it had learned about the Charizard Valley, a very impressive Dragon Breath. Amazing May, Max, and Brock, as the Dragon Breath practically ripped a hole through a cloud. Ash was very impressed, and asked Charizard to show off its speed next, telling it to fly up as fast as it could. Charizard roared, showing its determination as it flew higher and higher and higher into the sky, extremely fast, stunning May and Max. While Ash and the gang and Pikachu were really enjoying Charizard's flight, Team Rocket was enjoying it as well, as they were spying on Charizard flying through some binoculars in some nearby woods. On the edge of a cliff, Meowth, James, and Jesse were talking about how strong Charizard was, and James suggested that they try and steal Charizard, with Meowth admitting that was a good idea, but he would rather wait until after lunch and after Charizard's performance, because he was really enjoying it, and he proceeded to take out a lunch basket, about to eat lunch. But Jesse suddenly got angry at Meowth and declared that capturing Articuno was more important than both having lunch and capturing Charizard. Even though she admitted that Charizard was strong, Articuno would be way better to get, since it would be way rarer, and Giovanni would like it way more, since it was a legendary. Meowth rebutted, though, that they already tried to capture Articuno and failed, although Jesse assured Meowth that she had a plan this time, leading James to inquire what it was. Jesse just told James to shut the fuck up and quit questioning so she could actually explaining that Charizard and Articuno were going to battle in the Battle Factory today, according to what Ash and Nolan said yesterday. So basically, she thought that Charizard could weaken Articuno for them, and that would give them an opportunity to steal it once it was weakened after the battle. James and Meowth were skeptical about this plan, especially Meowth, who stated that Articuno would probably win since it was a legendary Pokemon. It probably wouldn't even break a sweat during the battle, so what would they do then if Articuno won? How would they catch it? Leading Jesse to simply state that Charizard was a very powerful Pokemon, and they would weaken Articuno enough since Articuno had a type disadvantage. Although Meowth and James were still skeptical, so Jesse just made them a promise. If Articuno was able to defeat Charizard, then they would just steal Charizard while it was weak instead, and make do with Charizard. Meowth and James were happy with this, so they all cheered and chanted a mini version of their motto while Wobbuffet joined in. Meanwhile, Sergio, Nolan's assistant, led Ash and Gang and Scott into the Battle Factory's arena, where Ash saw the largest battle stadium he had ever seen, with both of the trainer corners situated above the battlefield, and there was also a dome roof that would allow sky battles, with Ash remarking that it was the best battlefield for today since both the Pokemon that were participating could fly, so they could end up having a flying battle. Just then, Nolan was revealed to already be in the Battle Factory, stepping quickly onto his side of the battlefield and greeting Ash. Nolan then asks Ash if he was ready to battle, and Ash confirms this. Nolan then admits to Ash that it's been a while since he's fought a good opponent, and he hopes Ash knew that he wouldn't hold back, promising that he wouldn't. And Articuno wouldn't go easy on Ash either, stating that if Ash didn't want to face the power of a legendary Pokemon, then he should just back out now. Ash simply replied that he wouldn't back down, and warned Nolan that he wouldn't go easy on him with his Charizard either. Nolan smiled at this, happy to have a willing opponent, as he called for his Articuno. In response, Articuno suddenly flies into the stadium from the roof and squawks, indicating that it was ready for battle, as it lands on the battlefield, which created shards of ice due to Articuno's natural ability to create ice, and as all these bits of ice fell to the ground, which made it look like it was snowing, Max was amazed by this awesome entrance, and May was as well, commenting that Articuno would be perfect for a Pokemon contest with that entrance. In response, Ash prepares himself, sending out Charizard, who immediately lands on the field and glares at Articuno, with Articuno glaring back. Nolan then informs Ash of the rules of the battle. It would be a one-on-one with no time limit, and Ash eagerly agrees to the rules. Scott then tells Brock, May, and Max to accompany him to the watching stands on a higher level, so that the four of them could watch the battle from a better view, since Scott knew that the battle would likely turn into a battle in the air, since both Pokemon could fly. So the higher up Scott, Brock, May, and Max were, the better view they would have. And he also didn't want to get in the way of the battle, just standing by the actual arena, either. Meanwhile, Team Rocket was on the roof of the battle factory. Jesse and James asked Meowth what his plan was, because Meowth had apparently come up with something, leaving Meowth to explain. And we see a little daydream version of his explanation. Basically, he knew that Charizard and Articuno would be battling in the air for most of the fight, so Articuno and Charizard would inevitably fly up close to the roof. That's why they were on the roof in the first place. Basically, when Charizard weakened Articuno enough, and Articuno was close enough to the top of the roof, Team Rocket were going to slice a hole in the roof using some tool that Meowth had, and then once the hole was big enough and Articuno was close enough, they could throw a net in through the hole to catch Articuno. Then they would quickly attach their net to the Meowth balloon that was right by the battle factory, and then escape in the Meowth balloon, going to Giovanni to give him his present, as Ash and the gang would cry out in misery, wanting Articuno back. Jesse and James really liked this plan, although they asked Meowth how they were going to make a hole in the roof in the first place, leaving Meowth to pull out some torches, and they proceeded to try and burn a hole in the roof. Meanwhile, back inside the battle factory, Ash and the gang and Scott were very hyped for the battle, with May, Brock, Max, and Scott watching from the stands in anticipation, and May calling to Ash, wishing him luck. Sergio then steps in the middle of the battlefield, acting as the referee, clarifying the rules that Nolan had already explained. Just then, the stadium starts to shake as the roof above opens up to make more room for Charizard and Articuno to fly around, so that they could even fly around and above the arena. Scott explained this to May, Brock, and Max as the roof opened even wider. Team Rocket certainly didn't expect the roof to open up like that, and they started to freak the fuck out. And they tried their best to dance in order to keep their balance, but Meowth was the first one to trip and grabbed onto James's leg so as to not fall off the roof, and James, in reaction, grabbed onto Jesse. As a result of the struggle, they ended up falling not off the roof, but into the battlefield, which caused dust to rise up into the sky from the impact, leaving Team Rocket to groan in pain because the impact was so hard. Ash, Brock, May, and Max were all shocked to see Team Rocket, with Max questioning what the fuck Team Rocket wanted this time, although Team Rocket just get back up and recite their motto, declaring their plan to capture Articuno. As Trineco joins in on the motto as well. Jesse then admits that Team Rocket was planning to capture Articuno when Charizard weakened it, but they would just have to settle for capturing Articuno now. Ash demanded that Team Rocket go away, but Team Rocket simply started to charge towards Articuno to capture it anyways, although Nolan refused to let this happen, ordering Articuno to use Ice Beam, which froze Team Rocket into a block of ice in a single hit. Ash then takes action, having Charizard and Pikachu team up, having Charizard unthaw and burn Team Rocket with a flamethrower, and then Pikachu blast Team Rocket off with a Thunderbolt straight through the roof. So with Team Rocket gone, Nolan thanks Ash for his assistance and asks Ash if he was ready. Ash confirms this, so Sergio declared that it was time for the battle to officially begin, and the battle starts with both Charizard and Articuno going straight up to the sky. While May, Brock, Max, and Scott watched, with Scott commenting that he really wanted to see Charizard's skills firsthand, since he hadn't seen Charizard's demonstration earlier that morning. Ash then has Charizard use Flamethrower, and Nolan has Articuno use Ice Beam, and when the attacks collide, Charizard's fire obviously breaks through the ice like it was nothing, and does a pretty decent amount of damage to Articuno, especially for it being a legendary Pokemon, as it falls to the ground, and Ash compliments Charizard on its strength, bragging about how Charizard could go toe-to-toe with a legendary Pokemon. Max simply just thought that Charizard was winning because it was a fire type in comparison to an ice type, with May agreeing, stating that type advantage was really going to give Ash an advantage. Just then, though, Articuno managed to recover, flying back up into the air, seemingly not having sustained any damage anymore. As Articuno flew towards Charizard, Ash told Charizard to use another flamethrower, but Articuno was able to dodge this time, spinning around the fire and past Charizard, with the two Pokemon glaring at each other in the process. May and Max were surprised that Articuno was able to get past Charizard so quick, with Scott admitting that Ash's Charizard was good, but it was going to take more than just a fire attack to take out a legendary Pokemon. Nolan then instructs Articuno to spin into a steep dive straight towards Charizard, and Ash tells Charizard to fly right over to Articuno in an attempt to attack it before Articuno could get an attack off on Charizard. However, while both Pokemon were flying towards each other, Nolan had Articuno use a mist, which obscured Charizard's vision, making it very hard for it to find Articuno. It tried its best, but before it could see anything, Articuno suddenly emerged through the mist and hit Charizard to the ground before it could react. Although Charizard was thankfully able to get up and wipe the mist out of its eyes, as the mist fully disappeared, while Brock commented that Articuno was really showing off the full potential of a legendary Pokemon right now. Right as Charizard had fully shook in his head to get all the mist out of his eyes, he looked up just in time to see Articuno flying straight for him, basically trying to ambush Charizard while it was on the ground. So Charizard fires off a Dragon Breath, but Articuno dodges, and flying upwards to do so. Charizard tries to fire another one, but Articuno dodges this one as well. And Charizard fires the third Dragon Breath, though this one actually makes contact and pushes Articuno further up. Articuno manages to fly out of the Dragon Breath's range, but as a result, it lost its balance and started to fall toward the ground, leading Ash to tell Charizard to go grab Articuno and use Seismic Toss on it while it was injured and distracted. But while Charizard was heading towards it to use Seismic Toss, Articuno managed to regain balance and flew away before Charizard could grab it, leaving May and Max shocked at how fast Articuno was able to recover from the Dragon Breath and simply just fly away, with Nolan bragging that Articuno could take a lot of hits. Next, Nolan orders Articuno to use Ice Beam that hits Charizard on the back and the wing, worrying May and Max, but Charizard took the hit like a champ and just flies towards Articuno, seemingly unharmed. Next, Charizard uses a flamethrower, but Articuno was able to dodge it and attack Charizard with a Steel Wing, leading Ash to desperately call out for his Charizard, telling him to withstand the attack as best he can. But Brock, May, Max, and Scott were worried, noting that Charizard was now fallen to the ground, roaring in pain after that Steel Wing. And Ash was panicking as well now, concerned that Charizard would be knocked down after hitting the ground hard from such a huge height, hitting the ground so hard that a whole bunch of dust was kicked up. Thankfully, though, Charizard was able to get up from the ground, emerging from the dust, and it glared at Articuno, roaring in anger. Nolan wasn't concerned, though, as he saw that Charizard had taken immense damage, while Articuno was practically undamaged. So he just had Articuno try and wrap up the battle by using a Water Pulse, shocking Ash that Articuno actually knew a water move. After Ash had recovered from his shock, he told Charizard to dodge as fast as he could, but Ash didn't recover from his shock fast enough, which meant that Charizard wasn't able to dodge fast enough, so the Water Pulse hit Charizard hard and sent it flying into a wall. Ash begs Charizard to get up, but Charizard hunches his neck in pain. He was having real difficulty getting up. Brock, May, Max, and Scott rushed over to the edge of the stand that they were on to get a better view, since Charizard was by the wall. Once they got a better view of Charizard, Max was able to assess that the water-type attack obviously dealt a lot of damage to Charizard, with it being a fire-type, while Brock questioned how Articuno even knew a water move, leading Scott to explain that Nolan made sure his Articuno friend knew a lot of moves to counter its weaknesses, stating that as an Ice-type, Articuno was weak to fire-types, so to counteract this, Articuno learned a water-type attack, which made it able to counter a fire-type. Scott stated that this strategy proved why Nolan was a Frontier Brain, because it was a very, very good strategy. And another reason why Nolan was a Frontier Brain was because he used a weighted out strategy, which involved Nolan waiting for an opportunity for Articuno to attack Charizard directly while it was weakened, which was why it focused on dodging Charizard's attacks for most of the time to weaken it so that it would be easier for it to hit Charizard directly. As May looked down at Charizard from the stands, she really wondered if Charizard could get up, because he was really struggling, even when Ash begged it to get up. Eventually, though, Charizard did manage to stand up slightly, but it was in so much pain it started to fall, wincing, making Ash extremely nervous, knowing that he only had one chance with Charizard, and if Charizard was done, then the match was done, and he had no clue what to do now, because Charizard just wouldn't get up. Ash eventually did realize that he had one thing that he could potentially use to his favor, though, as he had a flashback to something that happened earlier that morning when he was riding Charizard, and Charizard was showing off his skills. Basically, when he and Charizard and Pikachu were flying above the clouds, out of Brock, May, and Max's view, Charizard began to glow a bright red, which indicated to Ash that Charizard had learned a new move while it was at the Charizard Valley, aside from Dragon Breath being Overheat, because he recognized a Torkoal glowing red when it used Overheat, so that's how Ash knew that Charizard had learned Overheat as well. And he was very excited by this, because the whole sky soon filled with red light, just barely out of Brock, May, and Max's view still. Ash thought that maybe this Overheat attack would be a saving grace, and he could use it to his advantage, but at the same time, he wasn't in a rush to use it, because he wanted to keep it as a surprise until he really needed it, but he may have really needed it right now. Ash's thoughts were quickly turned back to the actual battle, as Nolan quickly ordered Articuno to use an Ice Beam, which led Charizard to fly down in an attempt to avoid the attack. But even if he flew down, Charizard was only able to avoid the Ice Beam partially, as one of his wings got frozen, particularly the tip of it. As a result, Charizard lost control of itself, not able to fly properly, so it started to fall to the ground from high speed and height. Nolan then gets an idea, seeing how Articuno had used Ice Beam on the ground as well, so he told Articuno to use a Water Pulse to destroy the ice and turn it into icy shards, which started to fly towards Charizard and pelt it. Brock was amazed by this move from Articuno, particularly in awe of the fact that Articuno had just used a combination of Ice Beam and Water Pulse to create an entirely new way to attack Charizard. Ash, in order to have Charizard protect itself, tells Charizard to shield itself from the pelted ice with its wings and then fly up to avoid the pelts. Charizard does fly up, emitting heat as it did a little bit, since it was so angry due to having a portion of its wing frozen. Articuno followed Charizard, and May wondered if Charizard would be able to outfly it, especially since a portion of Charizard's wing was still frozen, which Brock pointed out, stating that with Charizard's wing still partially frozen, that would make flying difficult for Charizard. Scott then explained that Articuno's Ice Beam leaves effects that an opponent usually forgot, and they pay for it later, admitting that it was a well-played strategy by Nolan. Basically, Nolan liked to freeze parts of his opponent that were pretty minuscule, or at least they seemed minuscule, so that his opponent wouldn't really focus on them, like how Ash wasn't focusing on Charizard's frozen wing at all, because it was only partially frozen, not fully frozen, but in reality, this partially frozen wing was really making the battle tougher for Ash. Next, Articuno launches another Ice Beam, and immediately uses a Water Pulse to break the ice to pieces to create more pelts to hit Charizard. Ash comes up with an idea, simply having Charizard use Flamethrower to melt the ice shards before they made contact, but the heat didn't melt the shards in time, and Charizard was struck again, worrying Max, as he remarked that the combination of Water Pulse and Ice Beam was too hard to counter. To make matters worse for Ash, Nolan then had Articuno rise higher into the air, to the point where it was outside of the arena. Nolan then told Articuno to finish the battle once it was up, and this made Ash realize Nolan's plan. He was essentially going to have Articuno strike Charizard really hard from super high up, which would make the attack stronger, so Ash countered by having Charizard fly up as well. Not only that though, Ash realized that the situation was more dire than it was ever going to be, so now was the time to have Charizard use the attack that it learned all on its own, Overheat, which he commanded Charizard to use once it was above Articuno. It wasn't just at level with Articuno above the stadium, it was now above Articuno, and it used Overheat, which causes Charizard to glow bright red, and in the process, melt the ice off of its wing, allowing it to fly even higher. Getting above Articuno, just as Ash had ordered it, much to Articuno's shock. And Articuno was even more shocked when Charizard then went down and flew right towards Articuno. So Articuno tried to fly higher, but Charizard just caught up to it, and now they were basically neck and neck. May was surprised that Charizard knew Overheat, with Max being surprised as well, stating that Charizard definitely didn't know Overheat in the Johto League because Ash didn't use it, leading Brock to come to the correct conclusion that Charizard must have learned Overheat while it was training in the Charizard Valley. Scott was now very impressed with Ash's ability to suddenly change his strategy and wondered how Overheat would change the tide of the battle. Nolan smiled, happy to have a challenge, although he wasn't concerned, simply telling Articuno to try and get out of range from Charizard before it could use the Overheat, but Charizard remained equal with Articuno and eventually managed to pull ahead, allowing it to launch the Overheat straight at Articuno, which was an extremely strong Overheat now due to how long it had been charged up. Right as Charizard launched the Overheat, though, Articuno launched another Water Pulse, which collided with the Overheat, creating an explosion of mist and steam, which enveloped the entire arena in light. Ash, the gang, Nolan, and Scott all watched eagerly, waiting to see what would happen, as Articuno was enveloped by the mist and could no longer be seen. Why was Articuno in the mist and steam, but not Charizard, you may ask? Well, Nolan had actually secretly ordered Articuno to hide in the mist and steam so it could catch Charizard off guard. So, Nolan quickly ordered Articuno to come out of the mist and steam, catching Charizard off guard using a Steel Wing, which hit Charizard pretty hard because Articuno was going very fast when he used the Steel Wing. Charizard was still in the air, but Ash and the gang got worried as Ash called out to Charizard, seeing that it was extremely tired and injured. While Articuno, on the other hand, was as strong as ever, barely taking any damage. Brock then started to really worry, coming to the conclusion, since he knew how Pokemon felt in terms of health, that Charizard wouldn't be able to withstand another direct hit by any attack from Articuno, and Ash was worried, knowing that he couldn't use Overheat anymore, since it didn't work the first time, and it wouldn't work the second time, since it wouldn't be as powerful, since after every consecutive hit, Overheat got weaker. Out of pure desperation, though, Ash realized that there was still one thing he could do to potentially turn the battle around. Nolan didn't know this, though, and simply told Ash that he battled bravely, commending him, but apologized, as it was now time for having to end the battle, telling Articuno to finish Charizard off with another Steel Wing. So, Articuno charged in for the attack, while Brock, May, Max, and Scott watched anxiously, since Charizard was not moving to dodge. It was just sitting in the middle of the sky, doing nothing. Just then, though, right as Articuno was about to strike Charizard with the Steel Wing, Ash ordered Charizard to grab a hold of Articuno, and Charizard obliged, grabbing Articuno's entire body, including its wings, which stopped its Steel Wing and stopped it from moving. Shocking both Articuno and Nolan, as Ash tells Charizard to bring Articuno down with a seismic toss. Since Articuno couldn't do anything, Charizard simply spun wildly, spiraling downward, as Nolan could only watch in shock, as Charizard flew straight into the ground with Articuno, causing a massive amount of dust to fill the area because of the impact of both Charizard and Articuno hitting the ground. Everyone eagerly watched with anticipation, waiting for the dust to clear, and when it did, Ash and the gang, Scott, and Nolan saw that Charizard had let go of Articuno, and both Pokemon were laying on the ground. Charizard was in worse shape, though, as it was clenching its teeth in pain, and Articuno actually was able to rise up, squawking at Charizard through an injured beak. Ash panicked, though, seeing that the beak was the part of Articuno that was most injured, and other than that, it was able to get up fully. So, Sergio, seeing that Charizard was down and Articuno wasn't, was about to declare Charizard unable to battle, and Nolan and Articuno the winner, but Nolan stops him, telling him to wait, telling Sergio that he knew the battle wasn't over yet. Sure enough, Sergio looked at the battlefield to see Articuno let out one more cry from its injured beak before slumping to the ground, actually unable to battle, as Charizard actually was able to rise to its feet, growling with renewed energy after seeing Articuno defeated. Basically, it was so motivated seeing Articuno down that it was able to get up. Sergio realized that Articuno was actually the one that had taken the most damage, and Articuno was actually down, so Sergio officially declared Ash the winner of the match, along with his Charizard. Ash and the gang and Scott were in disbelief at first at the fact that Charizard had actually been able to beat a legendary Pokemon, but once they realized that this was true, Ash and the gang and Scott cheered loudly, and Charizard did as well, flying into the air, letting out a victory flamethrower. Multiple, actually. And Brock remarked that this was a once-in-a-lifetime battle. Scott states that Ash was the perfect competitor for the Battle Frontier, stating his belief that Ash had the potential to go very far, perhaps even to the secret 7th facility. Back down on the battlefield, Ash thanked Charizard for putting up such a great fight, and Nolan did the same for Articuno. And then, Nolan and Ash walked up to each other and complimented each other, with Nolan saying to Ash that Ash was one of the finest trainers to ever challenge him. Ash admits that Nolan was a challenge for him as well, and thanks Nolan for the battle. Brock, May, and Max then go down to the battlefield to congratulate Ash, as does Scott, and Ash and Nolan compliment their opponent's Pokemon, with Ash complimenting Articuno and Nolan complimenting Charizard, with Nolan admitting that he was very impressed by Ash's victory. Just then, Sergio comes up to Ash, and per Nolan's request, Sergio pulls out a little box that had something inside. The knowledge symbol, Ash's reward for beating Nolan. Sergio then explains that the Battle Frontier presents winners with symbols to show that they triumphed over a certain frontier brain, reminding Ash of this. As Nolan pulls the knowledge symbol out of the box and tells Ash that this particular symbol shows that Ash had a victory over the Battle Factory leader, and likely used knowledge to do it, since Nolan's strategies were based on knowledge. Nolan then proudly hands Ash the knowledge symbol, as Ash thanks him and does his usual victory pose with both Charizard and Pikachu. Nolan then hands Ash one more gift, which was a Frontier Folio, otherwise known as a symbol case, which was for Ash to put all of his future Battle Frontier symbols in, so that he had a place to keep them, much like a badge case. Ash thanked Nolan for this. And with that, Ash and the gang, Nolan and Sergio, left the battle factory, going outside. Once outside, Nolan said goodbye to his Articuno as it flew away for now. After Articuno had left, Ash knew that Charizard had to go back to the Charizard Valley with Liza, so he stepped up to Charizard and said goodbye to it as well. In response, Charizard growled happily and launched a flamethrower at Ash, burning him. Ash was confused by this, although Brockmay and Max just laughed, reminding Ash that it appeared the flamethrower was Charizard's way of showing his respect for Ash. Before Charizard could actually fly back, Scott, who was standing next to Nolan, interjected and suggested that Ash head to the next Battle Frontier facility known as the Battle Arena next. Max decided to look it up in his Pokénav and found out that the Battle Arena wasn't too far from where they were now. Specifically, it was just on the other side of Saffron City. And this led Ash to declare that he and the gang were going to head there for Ash's next symbol, hoping that Max's Pokénav was being truthful this time. Nolan then says goodbye to Ash, offering him some encouraging words, wishing him good luck in his future Battle Frontier battles. The episode then ends with Ash waving goodbye to Charizard as it finally leaves back to the Charizard Valley, and Ash celebrates, holding up his knowledge symbol in the air as he and the gang set off for the Battle Arena, saying goodbye to Scott as well, as Scott drives away in his fancy car. Yeah, unfortunately Charizard wasn't going to be a permanent member of Ash's team again. This was just a temporary thing.